Welcome everybody to the Summer Research Symposium. And we're going to get going today. I'm the moderator, Becky. I'm a research assistant. I'm also a program coordinator with Alexia Jen Lindwall. Jen is IT backup, amazing, extraordinary, all around. Anything you need. My pronouns are she, her. When you come up to present, if you're a presenter today, optional, you can give pronouns. So my job is really just to make sure that we stay on a presentation schedule and make sure that all of this is queued up for presentations. So these are presentations from trainees across summer programs. Everyone's been working all summer long on their research. I don't know if I'm supposed to say all of this, but yeah, everyone's been working really hard on the research. We're really excited that you're here to learn about it. The presentation structure is 5 minutes for the presentations and 5 minutes for Q&A, and then another 5 minutes for getting the next presenter up here. If you have questions, don't be shy. We will have questions as well as moderators to kind of get things flowing. And you can cruise between rooms. We just ask that you do it after the Q&A is done and when it's time when people are just switching. So the room is mic'd and we are recording. And there may be some people who are popping into the Zoom room to watch. So if we can keep chatter at a minimum. So without further ado, our first presenter, Kaye Ann, welcome.
Hello everyone, my name is Kaye Ann Obando, she, her, and today I will be introducing an ongoing study with Dr. Prychyna's lab, who works with the emergency department up at OHSU. So it focuses on utilizing an electronic clinical decision support tool in order to optimize stroke prophylaxis for acute atrial fibrillation. So a little bit of background on the study. Atrial fibrillation, or AFib, is characterized as an irregular and often rapid heart rate that commonly causes poor blood flow. And because of this, it's associated with an increased risk of stroke, heart failure, and even death. It is the most common type of cardiac arrhythmia evaluated in the emergency department, or the ED, and is responsible for up to 1.2 million visits to the ED annually. So a large number of people are admitted to the ED. And when it comes to treating AFib in appropriate candidates, oral anticoagulants, which we can call OACs, or blood thinners, are recommended by professional cardiology guidelines in order to prevent stroke. OACs decrease the risk of stroke by up to 64%. But despite this information, it was found that OACs are underprescribed within the ED. And it was found that it was due to providers feeling a lack of empowerment, deferral of prescribing to longitudinal care clinicians, and our providers feeling too many guidelines and updates when it comes to prescribing OACs. So the aim of our study, our first aim, is to compare how different interventions such as EHR-based CDS tools will affect the prescribing of OACs over time. We hypothesized that using a tool will increase the prescribing of OACs at ED discharge in patients with new AFib. And a tool integrated into the EHR will have a greater impact on prescribing than a less integrated web tool. Another aim of the study is to evaluate clinician experiences with factors that may influence the CDS tool implementation through a qualitative approach. We hypothesize that clinicians will have a higher acceptability of the tool and be open to additional CDS tools in the future, as well as health system resources such as the ability to refer patients to an anticoagulation clinic, or primary care will facilitate ED tool utilization. The study is designed as a step-wedge cluster randomized trial design. And we have step 0 to 3, with step 0 being our pre-implementation method, in which retrospective data will be collected from AHR on all patients meeting our inclusion and exclusion criteria from 3 hospitals for up to a year and a half before step 1. Step 1 is our link out, in which clinicians will be trained on web-based portal of the CDS tool, and the link to the tool will be provided in the EHR or electronic health records. Step 2 will be our BPA or best practice alert and link out, in which a BPA is triggered when a patient is diagnosed with AFib, and an alert will pop up within the EHR and a link to the web portal. Step 3 is an additional step in which FHIR or Fast Health Interoperability Resources is an highly integrated EHR-based CDS tool that automatically pulls in patient data to our risk calculators. So the methods of the study, we will be utilizing EHR from 3 urban EDs within the Portland area, one of them being an academic medical center, OHSU, and 2 community hospitals, which are Hillsborough Medical Center and Adventist Health Portland. Our participants will include ED clinicians who are board certified or eligible and interface with patients, as well as ED patients who we have an exclusion and inclusion criteria for. We will be including patients who have a primary diagnosis of atrial fibrillation or paroxysmal AFib during an ED and more than a year of follow-up data, 17 years old or older with no AC less than a year from the ED visit. We'll be excluding patients who have a history of valvular disease, pregnancy, severe liver or kidney disease, major surgery within 72 hours, and recent brain, eye, or spinal cord injury or surgery. So this is a picture of the tool in which our providers can input the patient data, and once they've inputted that information, they will be able to view an assessment of stroke risk and major bleeding risk. There is also another feature in which they can view how no treatment may affect the population and how treatment or OACs may affect the population. So with this being an ongoing study, our current status within the study is we've completed the pre-implementation step or step 0, as well as step 1 in 2 sites, OHSU and HMC, and we're in a process at 1 site, which is AHP or South Portland. Step 2 is ongoing in 2 sites. That's for OHSU and HMC. And this is a mixed method study where we're collecting both quantitative and qualitative data. For future directions, we're looking at assessing how clinician experience affects the prescription of OACs and exploring how patient ethnicity affects the prescription of OACs. That's all I have for you today. I just want to extend my thanks to Dr. Kaye and the rest of the members of lab for their continuous support and guidance.
What is your role in this project?
So I'm still fairly new to the lab, still getting to know the study. For my part, so far, I've learned how to review charts and see whether patients will be included or excluded from the study. Yes.
Yeah, so for assessing how clinicians experience, how a clinician experience being in the reported page.
Yes, so like how long they've been practicing or in residency, how long their experience practicing as a resident will affect them prescribing cases.
Yeah. So how are you going to use it?
That's a great question. Sorry.
I guess I'm asking about I know, I understand it's a current ongoing study, but just want to for public health.
We, for our charts, we do enable our physicians to input their experience on how much they. I'm not sure of how to like answer that question right now, but I'll keep that in mind.
So we look at the athletes, so a student looked at the Oregon Medical Board licensing, and we looked at how many years of when they got licensed, and how many years of training they've had, and when they got out. We've done pre-implementation, or looked at pre-implementation for that data and compared it to that is an effect associated with the outcome, which is increased or decreased prescribing, and we definitely see that there's a difference in those who have more experience are more likely to prescribe versus those who are less experienced in the field are less likely to prescribe. Hoping that putting a tool out there will also increase standardization across providers as well as standardization. Well, we'll talk about that in the next person's study, so I won't talk about that yet.
Do you know what your role is going to be moving forward? Will it be reviewing the records and seeing who's included or excluded, or something else?
That's what I'm working on so far. I'm still working with our research coordinator for getting integrated into the study.
Are there any plans to look at this in rural hospitals and currently booked?
That's what I was speaking about with one of my research coordinators on whether location will affect the prescribing of OACs. So we're still looking at that.
As a part of this study, because it costs more money to get data and to get into those hospitals. Those two are at least connected to OHSU and are all part of the same electronic health record system. Anytime we add an additional hospital, it'll cost us more to use the tool. Right now, that kind of giving it to us for free, it's the same instance of Epic. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it's the same type of layout. Every Epic, the electronic health record, is different in every hospital system because you can adapt it to what you want it to be for that hospital, which makes it extremely expensive. So the tool has to integrate well within that system. So every time you switch systems, it costs more. It's not cheap to run a study. This is like $1.5 million grant. It's still not enough. So. That's a great question. We want to do that. It just costs more.
I was not thinking of speak my fancy donut. Explain to me where I gave the outside of the. No, I'm sorry.
That works for yours. Have 2 minutes. Yeah, if you want to wait 2 minutes, just in case anyone's coming on to
I thought 15 minutes. Oh,
We'll give you the thumbs up.
okay. Am I getting an introduction? Are you okay with this?
You know what? It's a good one.
Okay, ready? Okay.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Mariam, and I did my research on health equity and stroke prophylaxis for new atrial fibrillation in the emergency department. Before I start, I had a question for you guys with a show of hands. Have you ever had to advocate for a parent, a family member, in any way, shape, or form in the healthcare field, whether it was like translating for them or like looking at health forms? I know I've had. So this is why I decided to look into health equity. And this study was funded by the NIH, and I have no disclosures. For some background, as you guys heard in the previous presentation, this is that same AFib study, or atrial fibrillation. So as you know, it's the most common cardiac arrhythmia in the world. We also know that it increases the risk of stroke if the appropriate oral anticoagulant is not prescribed by, but if it is taken, it decreases it by 64%. So we also know that Hispanic patients are 30% less likely to be prescribed medication in general. So I wanted to look into specifically emergency room and anticoagulants. So as well, we also know that patients who do not speak the local language, so English in our case, are also less likely to be prescribed or be at a disadvantage in our healthcare system. So we sought to explore whether patient ethnicity affected oral anticoagulant prescriptions. I also looked at the primary language of the patient and whether the patient required an interpreter with their physician visit at the emergency room or not, and how that affected the prescription rates. For our methods, we did electronic health record data. We had 3 sites. One was an urban tertiary academic site and 2 urban community hospitals. And the patients were over the age of 17 with a primary diagnosis of AFib or atrial fibrillation or paroxysmal AFib from January of 2020 to 2022. Our exclusion criteria was pretty large, but some of them are high bleeding risk, pregnancy, and being admitted to the hospital, having liver or kidney disease, or having a major surgery within 72 hours of their emergency department visit. We had 8 trained chart reviewers who manually abstracted the data from the patients and put it into the charts. And an story analysis was performed on the prescription rate, the primary language, and interpreter need, as well as the CHAS-VAS score. And then that relationship was tested for statistical significance with a Fisher's test. For our demographics, we had 393 patients who qualified for our study, 45% of which were female, 83% were white, and 60% were Hispanic Latino ethnicity. For our results, we had, this is for the prescription rate for the Hispanic Latino patients versus non-Hispanic Latino patients. And for that, we found there was no evidence of association between the prescription rate and the patient's ethnicity being Hispanic Latino, which is good. We then looked at the prescription rate versus preferred language, as you can see. And we didn't only look at Spanish, we also looked at other languages as well. And in the gray, you can see it's the patients who did not get prescribed, and in the blue is the patients who were prescribed. As you can see, for the Spanish patients, 50% were prescribed, 50% were not. And then we looked at whether they required an interpreter at their physician visit. And the patients who required an interpreter and were prescribed is in the dark blue, and the patients who were not prescribed but required an interpreter are in that dark gray color. As for that, we also found there was no evidence of association between the patients being other than English and for the patients who required an interpreter. We then looked at the CHAS-VAS score, and when we looked at this chart, found that the CHAS-VAS score was actually statistically higher for the patients who required an interpreter at their physician visit, meaning they should be prescribed more than what they're being prescribed right now. some of our limitations is for the Hispanic Latino data specifically, it was a small data set. And the other limitation is some possible abstraction errors as it was manually abstracted by humans, so there could have been some human error. So in conclusion, there was no evidence of association between patients' ethnicity being Hispanic Latino and then being prescribed oral anticoagulant in the emergency department. And there was also no evidence of association between oral anticoagulant prescription for patients who preferred a language other than English and for those who required an interpreter. But for those who require an interpreter, they may be at a higher risk for strokes because they are supposed to be getting prescribed more than their peers, but they're not. They're being prescribed at an equal amount. What's next? We need to further investigate what other factors play a role in how physicians are prescribing to patients. There could be some communication barriers between provider and patient, and some potential unconscious bias. That could all be done with more data collection. And I would like to give a huge thank you to my PI, Prychyna, and we have some of our team here as well. We have Nick, Joy, Jordan, we have Kaye Ann and Diana, and Jeff is in the office. Huge thank you to all of our teams and to the Build Exit program and everyone. And I'll take any questions.
Do you have any thoughts on why those who need an interpreter might have that higher score?
I do have an assumption, or I guess, or hypothesis, I shall say. It might be due to the fact that sometimes physicians might maybe assume because there is an interpreter, maybe this patient won't quite understand the prescription and how often they need to take, or potential miscommunication between the provider and patient. And maybe that makes them a little bit more hesitant to prescribe, just for their worry that it won't be taken as it should be. So that could be it, but we definitely need to look more into it, possibly do physician interviews to maybe ask the physician why was that the case, or what went into your thought process behind prescribing.
Another aspect could be they're maybe slightly sicker because they're not getting as much preventative care as well because of the need for interpreters. They're less likely to go. That's not part of our study, and it would be much more complicated to look into that. They're not going in as much to go see a medical provider, primary care, and as a result, they get more complications, more comorbidities, and a higher stroke risk score as a result.
Thank you.
Let's see. We'll start the next presentation at 10:15. A little bit of time if you need a snack, some coffee.
My husband's how much money? You know, I'm not waking up at 2 in the morning to make sure.
The thing that I'm just sort of making sure because it's like not showing them.
So then they'll get shorter, but it's fine.
No, let's go all the way. Okay. That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, everything's a little. Oh, yeah. Black and matching.
That's artistry.
For the poster on the, okay.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I get that. I was like,
Holy silent.
2 minutes.
Chest it out. That was necessary. But you have to. So that's what that because. It does.
The right here.
Can you, are you wanting to use the keyboard?
Sure.
Mouse kind of on it, right on your presentation.
That's fine.
We'll be fine.
Yeah, so funny.
What's the last one though? There or top there?
Like mine.
Yeah.
You ready? All right. Our next presenter. Take it away.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Prychyna. I am part of Dr. Kaye's lab at OHSU, and I will be presenting on my study titled The Cost of Healthy Eating. First, some background information. In the US, there are 6.7 million adults that are affected by heart failure each year, and there are over 1 million emergency department visits for acute heart failure. And patients discharged directly from the ED or after a hospital admission for heart failure experience adverse health outcomes, which are readmissions back to the hospital or even death within 30 days after they are discharged. In my lab, I've been working on a study with Dr. Kaye called Get With the Guidelines in Emergency Department Patients with Heart Failure, also known as Guided HF, which implements a care transition program to improve these adverse health outcomes. This care transition program is a self-care coaching program, and I have been a self-care coach that has been meeting with patients to improve their self-care maintenance after they are discharged, either from the ED or after hospital admission. And patients have reported back to me that they are unable to afford a heart failure friendly diet, even after providing them with our cookbook resource called Don't Pass the Salt. And this specific patient population have been retired adults, 62 years of age or older, and they have also been receiving government assistance in the form of the SNAP income. This was very interesting to me that so many patients have reported this to me, and I wanted to investigate if a retired adult living alone would be able to afford a heart failure friendly diet on their SNAP income in Portland and in Hillsborough, and we chose these two specific cities to mirror the study sites in the guided HFs. In this study, we want to compare the cost of a heart failure friendly diet between two urban grocery stores, which will be two Fred Meyer locations, one in Portland and one in Hillsborough, and to evaluate its affordability on a SNAP income. And then we also want to compare the resources available in two urban cities, again, Portland and Hillsborough, and their potential to supplement a SNAP income. For this study, our methodology is up here. Our resource will be the Guided HF cookbook. We will be creating 3 different meal plans from this cookbook. And then the setting will be the two Fred Meyer grocery stores, one in Portland and one in Hillsborough. And then the duration of this will be 30 days in order to compare it to a 30-day SNAP income. So again, the data that we'll collect is the SNAP income a retired adult living alone will receive. The 3 meal plans will be a randomly selected meal plan, a least expensive meal plan, and the most expensive meal plan from the cookbook. And then we'll look into resources that are available in Portland and in Hillsborough, like food pantries, food banks, and Meals on Wheels. And we will be using descriptive analysis. We hypothesize that the meal plans that we create from the cookbook will not be affordable on a SNAP income alone, and also that there will be variation in food prices between the two Fred Meyer grocery stores in Portland and in Hillsborough. And we also hypothesize that there will be resources available in Portland and in Hillsborough, but that they alone will not be sufficient to become an alternative solution for the food stamps income. And they'll have to be used as a supplementation to that income. With this study, there are some limitations because of the design. One limitation is that we cannot account for an individual's distance from their home to the grocery store and the transportation methods that are available, along with the associated costs like gas or having to pay for a bus pass. We can also not account for an individual's health stamina or their ability to cook at home, and also their perception or willingness to use those additional resources. These are just the references for the background information in the previous slides. And then I wanted to thank my PI, Dr. Prychyna and Joy Kim, for their support and assistance in the creation of this study, as well as Build Exito for their support. Thank you. Any questions?
Really great research. And so why did you pick Fred Meyer's versus a more nationally well-known accessible brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. With our study design, we are limited to Portland and Hillsborough specifically. And when we were selecting grocery stores, we needed to select one where we could easily access the food prices. And with Fred Meyer specifically, we can go online to their website and we can select a specific store, not just limit it to a specific city. I can actually search up the address of the store. And also it will tell me the exact price of each ingredient based on that store. So I'm able to compare if there's a price variation between the two cities. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead. Yeah. This slide or this slide?
Okay. Yeah. So the care transition program is free or is it not?
It is free for patients. It's part of the larger guided HF study that I've been working on, and it's to help improve the adverse health outcomes that patients experience.
So does he have to have a referral from a doctor for it to be free, since they have to be using patients, or is it?
So at the time of their discharge, whether that's from the emergency department or from their hospital admission, they are referred into this kind of online program in Epic. And so we get them in our program, and we can see that they were admitted to the hospital or discharged from the ED because of heart failure. And then we reach out to them and ask them if they would be interested in participating in the self-care coaching program.
So is this care transition program not presented to patients before they leave?
That is something that I am not sure of. I know that we get the information for each patient and we are able to reach out to them, but I believe that providers are aware of this as well, since we've been talking to them and posting up information about this study. And so I am not sure if every provider tells the patient, but we do know that they are aware. And so that's more than likely what is happening, is they let patients know. But again, that's something that we don't know and we can't measure.
That's okay, I can understand. There's something.
Yeah.
Also, why didn't you choose only patients over 62 years old?
Because as a self-care coach, when I've been talking to these patients, I've had patients of various ages, but I've noticed a trend with retired adults, specifically those that are 62 years of age and older, because you can retire at any age, but for the SNAP income, and to be considered like a retired adult, you have to be 62 years of age or older. And so that's why we chose that specific population.
But the program itself is not.
No, the care transition program is not, but the study that I've created, the cost of healthy eating, I had to put that limitation on it because of the eligibility requirements for SNAP. Any other questions? Go ahead.
What has been the most surprising part about working with patients directly and providing that coaching?
I think the most surprising thing is how limited they are in their knowledge of heart failure. A lot of patients, we have a bunch of resources that we provide for them to educate them on their heart failure, what they can do to improve their diet, exercise, even fluid intake. And the most surprising thing to me has been patients reporting like,
I've never known that this is something that I should do and that this can help, or that these are the foods that I should be eating. And so it kind of exposes that knowledge that they don't have. And if they did, maybe that would improve the adverse health outcomes they experience, which was part of the reason why this care transition program was created. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know along with what you were saying just now, as you're saying that you were surprised that a lot of people didn't know about it. Do you have any future plans to maybe present this information to these hospitals so that maybe we can inform the patients? Primary care patients.
Yeah, that's a great question. Guided HF is a national program, and so that would be something that the funders are able to do once this program ends and they are able to receive the results. But that is a great question, and that is part of the motivation behind the study, is to hopefully be able to, show providers and everybody around the nation what's going on and what the trends are.
One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this, or is the information that you're able to provide through coaching also available for family members or people that could support the person who's in need of the healthy diet?
Yeah, so the way that we provide resources is we send it to their address or digitally through their email if for some reason we can't send it in the mail. And so, yeah, that information isn't just limited to the patient. And when I have talked to patients, some of them have their caregiver with them, whether that's a family member or someone separate. And, all three of us talk together and I explain about the resources to them as well. But my study specifically will be looking at, if a retired adult can afford a heart failure friendly diet based on that cookbook resource that we provide. Thank you so much. Oh, was there a question in the chat? So the question is,
I'm gonna do one more question, but
the question is, what would be an alternative for an eligible patient who's interested in the study that has transportation or mobility to go and purchase the ingredients? And that's a great question. That is something that unfortunately my study will not be able to look at due to the design. This is a study that I am doing on my own and I'm not getting funding for, but it would be interesting to see and understand what. But unfortunately, I can't go into depth with this study. Thank you.
about you. Do you want me to introduce you or do you want to introduce yourself? Want to use zeros?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Say your own name, say the name of your study.
Ground zero.
Yeah. That's what we want now.
What's here?
Get at it.
Hi, everybody ready to come back to focus?
Hi guys, my name is Ann and I'm from the Merit Lab at OHSU. So for my lab, I do an investigation of natural competence ability of Fusobacterium SFB and Animalis. So our objectives is to identify whether various strain of Fusobacterium F. animalis is natural competent to develop a genetic tracking system. So here's a cavity, under it will be abscess. So Fuso F. animalis usually are found in oral bacterium diseases or periodontal disease. Is a smaller group of F. nucleatum. So F. animalis is associated with many diseases, including brain infection, colorectal cancer, digestive tract, and pneumonia. So what is natural competence? Natural competence is the ability for the bacteria to take up foreign DNA. And you can see here, the foreign DNA will be through TAB, the bacteria can take up foreign DNA. And after that, they will have two sets of genetic into its own genome. So why are we doing this? The bacteria is under study. Not a lot of information is about that on Google or anything. The second is the pathogenic mechanism in oral infection are poorly understood. And we want to enhance our understanding of antibiotic resistance. And finally, we want to be able to manipulate, isolate, and knock out gene, and ultimately develop a universal genetic system for all bacteria. So our hypothesis is all bacteria are naturally competent. However, it requires certain environmental growth cues. So you can see pH level, bacterial density, temperature, and most importantly, the selective marker or the antibiotic is very important for it to have a transformation. So for method, first we isolate F. animalis from at OHSU. We isolate it and grow in the media. For this strain, we're using QH72A1. Then we're gonna identify the minimum inhibitory concentration. So what is the concentration that's not too high that kill all bacteria, or not too low that bacteria can survive easily? We want to find the perfect concentration that will have resistance to it. So, and then after that, we will isolate genomic DNA from the resistant strain and then the wild type. Then we're gonna, from the PCR product, we will be doing the GRA sequencing. For transformation, at first we will have a media, a normal regular media, and then we put genomic DNA on it, and then the bacteria on it. Wait for a day for the bacteria to take up the DNA. And then as the result, it will become resistant and be able to grow with that antibiotic. So for result, as you can see here, we have antibiotic concentration and dilution factor. Between 4 and 8 is too much antibiotic that the bacteria cannot grow at all, but 4 is too little. So the concentration will be in between them. And we will be able to observe transformation between 6 and 8 plates of antibiotic. For the result, here is the amino acid of the GRA gene for both the wild type and the resistant type. There's a point of mutation from the black to red of aspartic acid to asparagine. And similar point mutation were found in other strains as well. For transformation, QH72A1, we have 3 different media. As you can see, the genomic DNA from resistant type have way more transformation. I'll be able to grow way more than the wild type or the water. Similar result were found in the 85A8, which is different strain of F. animalis. So we have way more growth, almost like triple, yeah. For conclusion, we found that various strains of F. animalis are naturally competent, and transformation protocol can be used to screen bacteria for natural competence and use a tractable genetic system. for future direction, this is actually a Prychyna micra, which is the bacteria that our lab was studying. We were able to insert the whole genome or switch the whole genome using PCR product from national competence PCR. Yeah. For acknowledgement, I would like to say thank you so much to Dr. Merritt Lab and the Exido and URISE program. That would be it.
So, okay. I don't know if this is the right question or not, but backing up a little bit, was it transference or the, I was trying to get more of a sense of what that meant when you were showing
The bacteria.
yeah, and what it means, transformation.
Yeah, transformation.
Yeah, trying to get a sense of, okay, the transformation is the ability for bacteria to take up foreign DNA.
Yeah,
in its
so
genome. Okay,
so antibiotic or antibiotic resistant.
right.
The reason why we develop both those is our bacteria can have the ability to adapt to a different environment.
Right.
So when they are the environment that because their goal is to grow.
Yeah.
So when there's antibiotic come in,
Yeah.
a selective field bacteria will be able to incorporate the DNA from the environment into its own and become resistant to that antibiotic.
So it takes it in.
Yeah, it takes it in.
Mine now.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then it give birth or like grow more to a different type. So that's why we have those. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're trying to figure out how can we understand this resistance and change that by understanding the genome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So antibiotic. So a certain antibiotic would target a certain gene.
Yes.
So we want to be able like, oh, if we use that antibiotic, can we change that type of gene? And that's the goal.
Can you do it on the gene?
Yeah. So it's like a puzzle. We want to take in depending on the antibiotic or the marker we select.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So far down the road, what are some of the implications of this work, you know, in another 10 years? So how might this change how we treat different infections or build antibiotics? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, so the problem here is we don't have a genetic system for tracking bacteria because some bacteria is harder to track than the other. That growth rate is too slow that we can track the children or anything. So we want to be able to develop this and apply it to all bacteria and be able to track their genetics. And from that on, we can still do a different type of study on like how to prevent it, how to grow it. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
But now it's like the tracking. How do you even start tracking?
Yeah.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrizia Alpapara, and I'm a URISE Cohort 3 scholar. This summer, I spent my time in Dr. Gibbs's lab at OHSU, where our main focus was improving multiplex immunofluorescence imaging through novel fluorophore technology. And so, for some background, oligonucleotide conjugated antibody cyclic immunofluorescence is not only a mouthful, but is also one of many methods used in cancer imaging in order to map proteins in human cells. And so you can see in this diagram over here that this is how just the general process works. And our main focus was comparing the commercially available Alexa Fluor 647 dye to the Gibbs lab made fluorophore, which is the Oregon Fluor 650 dye. And so you can see that in the top left right there. And what's useful about this method is that because most fluorescence microscopes can only measure a limited number of fluorophores at the same time, this allows us to use a photocleavable linker, which will help with removing previous signal using UV light. And then we can then stain new antibody targets. And so essentially that's where the cyclic part comes in. You can stain and remove as many times as you want without damaging the tissue too much. And so that's pretty helpful when you have multiple targets you want to stain. And so over here, you can see an example of what a completely processed image of tissue that has gone through many rounds of staining and signal removal. So it becomes very colorful. And so one of the many problems that we encounter when performing immunofluorescence is that most commercially available fluorophores, like the Alexa fluor dyes that we have here, have a net negative charge that does at least increase solubility, but it also decreases specificity and increases background accumulation, which is something that we don't want. And so what our lab did to overcome this challenge was create this novel fluorophore, which is the Oregon Fluor 650. And so it has a net neutral charge that allows it to still contain the necessary biological components such as permeability, solubility, and compatibility, while increasing specificity and decreasing background accumulation. And so in initial studies that were performed in order to analyze the differences between OF650 and AF647, we took colorectal cancer FFPE tissue and incubated it first in the PBS buffer and then OF650 fluorophore and AF647. And so as you can see in red is the fluorophore channel and blue is the DAPI channel, which is basically just a nuclear marker. And so you can see in the buffer and OF650 tissue that was incubated, it's only blue. There's minimal to no visible red light showing up, which means that there's no non-specific binding going on, which is what we want. But in the AF647 one, it's kind of hard to tell, but it has a lot of red going on, which means that there's a lot of non-specific binding and increased background accumulation, which is what we don't want. And so since OF650 has a net neutral charge and AF647 has a net negative charge, we hypothesized that this difference in charges is what causes the non-specific background accumulation. And so over here, you can see a representative sample of the experiment we performed, where the first row is the colorectal cancer FFPE tissue that is stained with antibody and fluorophore conjugates. And then on the second row, you can see the same tissue, but stained with antibody or ab oligo plus imaging strand conjugates. And so as you can see in these top two right here, they're pretty much the same brightness and specificity, so they're pretty comparable. But then when you look at the Ki67 ones on the top right, you can tell that the OF650 is a lot brighter than the AF647 ones. And then down here though, the opposite is sort of true, where OF650 is actually a lot less bright, but it is more specific. And then on the bottom right, you can see that the same thing happens where the OF650 is a lot less bright, but it's more specific. And so essentially OF650 is pretty consistent on specificity, but it's typically a lot less bright than AF647 because it's pretty new, likely have been, so that's why we've been trying to improve on it. And so as you can tell though, that's just qualitative data right now, which is why in the future, we hope to also perform a quantitative assessment in order to get a better understanding of our results. And we also hope to improve on the design of the OF650 fluorophore by adding a linker to the fluorophore, which will help reduce their hindrance, which will allow for easier conjugation between the antibody and the fluorophore when they come together and increase the conjugation ratio. And so these are the references and acknowledgements. Just want to say a special thanks to Dr. Gibbs and Jocelyn Jones for guiding me through this project.
So you're doing this to better see cancer tissue?
Yes.
And be able to diagnose earlier or more often, or what is it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, diagnosing helps, or that it is for diagnosing, but also choosing the best treatment possible for patients. And so, yeah, right now we're just working with fixed tissue though. So hopefully in the future, in the very, very far future, we can start using it for clinical use. But that's very far. But yeah.
Oh,
Any other questions? Yes.
I mean, these are just social scientists. So what, you're in URISE cohort 3,
Yes.
so you just started this summer, and what will be your role sort of like through the rest of your URISE time on this project, or will you be working on something else?
Yeah, well, I will be continuing this, and I'll be the one that will be working on the future directions, which is the quantitative assessment, and then, but I won't be the one who will be improving on the linker. That's more for the organic chemists. But I will be testing out their new chemicals that they create for us and new fluorophores that they create. But hopefully, since there's a lot of different departments in this lab that I'm in, I kind of want to try what the other departments are like too. So, but I'll definitely continue on this one and start with the quantitative assessments. And we'll probably have to redo a couple of these because this was our first time ever doing this one. And so, well, not first time ever, but like one of the very early stages. So we'll have to redo it again. But yeah.
Do you know how many different trials you'll have over the next year? I mean, is it like many? Or is it like?
I'm not sure actually, because yeah, hopefully until we get it right.
Yeah, right.
Because we had to learn a lot of these methods because there are a lot of them we've never done before. Usually we just order the fluorophores from a company and they give it to us, but this time we actually put everything, we conjugated them together instead of them already coming in conjugated. And so that's why we kind of want to redo it, because it was like, we're all pretty new to it. But yeah, I think there might be a lot.
There's a lot of permutations. There's
Yeah.
a lot of combinations.
Yeah, and yeah, and so there's a lot of math, so hopefully we don't have to redo it too much. And so yeah, so we'll see. Yes. I am actually not really sure. For now, I know that right now we're hoping that these fluorophores, I believe they're mostly just to find the best treatment for patients in order to like see the structures of where all of the, because this fluorophore is to detect CHCs in particular, which are circulating hybrid cells. I actually have an extra one here, just in case someone asks about that. But they're actually, we're testing out the fluorophores that go with the biomarkers that will identify these specific cancer cells, which are hybrid cells. And so there's, I don't know, I would say there were just two, yeah, I would say it's just mostly, I'm actually not sure. But yes, I think that it would be after they already had cancer in order to analyze how far it's spread. Yeah. Yeah. I'd have to ask about that. But yeah, other questions?
Since it's neutral, is there solubility issues?
Yeah, that was the thing that they were thinking of. It does decrease the solubility just a little bit, but it's still pretty soluble. But yes, that is one of the caveats, is it decreases solubility.
You got a picture?
Of the structure?
Yeah.
Yeah, right here.
Oh,
Yeah, they're all. Yeah. And so that's why the commercially available ones were so favored. That's why they're one of the most popular. It's very soluble.
Yeah.
So as you can tell, even though all the charges are different for these different alexafluorides, they're all still negative, which, since the polarity, right, helps it be more soluble. But like we said, that does increase non-specific binding to other structures that we don't want to see. And so, which is why we're trying to increase the specificity.
What is your favorite part of this lab? You like applying the dye to the tissue or you like analyzing it?
I would say applying dye to the tissue. I didn't do much of that because by the end it was a little bit rushed, but I think that was fun. I think I really just like pipetting. I think that's what I would say is my favorite. And so looking at the computer and changing the image process or like processing the images is not the most fun for me. I like more of wet lab work. So yeah.
Images look like stars. You know?
Oh, which ones?
Yeah, like they look.
These ones?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they look really cool. I think it looks really, really pretty.
yeah.
But it's, to me, there's a lot of computer work in it. Like when you change the contrast settings and everything, and I was like, oh, that's kind of tiring for your eyes especially.
Yeah.
But yeah. Any other questions?
Concludes our presentations. We've got posters